Now, we love these stories, albeit it might be just bordering on legal or not. A German banker was given a 22-month suspended sentence after her legal team pleaded that she suffers from a syndrome. It's called helper syndrome. She was stealing from the rich, giving to the poor, and as she's known in Germany, she is the Robin Hood Bankerin. Should she be applauded? Joining us now is psychologist Professor Carey Cooper. Good morning, Carey.
Good morning to you, Fred.
Do you suffer from helper syndrome?
Oh, no, I don't really. But if I can use
Do you believe in it?
along the line, I will. For sure.
You ever heard of it before, Carey?
Yeah, we used to call it the Good Samaritan syndrome. We have all these syndromes. I guess as psychologists, we have to kind of promote our trade somehow. But,
Right.
I mean, it used to be called the Good Samaritan syndrome and everything else. And the interesting thing about it, I mean, in this case, well, not just this case, but if you look at, there's a whole new field, Fred, called positive psychology, you know,
Right.
giving to other people, helping other people, being resilient, having hope, glass half full, all that kind
All
of
sounds
stuff.
good, Carey, but the difference between the Good Samaritan syndrome and the helper syndrome is the Good Samaritan thing doesn't involve theft.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the thing here is helping other people is great, but helping other people to the disadvantages of certain other people is not good news.
Yeah.
First of all, it's illegal, but aside from the illegal, that's not the way to do it, actually.
From what I've been reading about the story, she was approached by people who were needing funds for whatever reason, and because she was working in the bank, she knew that there
That's
were
right.
several wealthy people who hadn't touched their account in a long years.
I know.
And they'd six figures of sums in their accounts, and she just
Wouldn't that
thought,
be
"Oh,
nice?"
that'd be nice." And you know, so that's one thing. The other thing is, unless they didn't manage to follow the audit trail properly, she didn't take a single cent for herself.
I know, it's incredible.
It is, isn't it?
It's by the way, it's an amazing defense anyway, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's a kind of moral dilemma, isn't it? Here she is taking from the rich to give to the poor, but taking nothing for herself.
Uh-huh.
A really interesting phenomenon. But on the other hand, you know, this is helping other people is great. I mean, there's quite a lot of research evidence showing that you giving to other people is good for your own health.
Oh, bet it is.
Absolutely. You
If
know,
it's your
but
funds.
you have to really give it rather than take from somebody else to give.
Uh-huh. Because, you know, I think, she obviously did get a good feeling out of doing it,
Yeah,
albeit
she
it
kept on
wasn't
doing
her. Well,
Well, you think about it, most of us who do things for charities make us feel good. We feel when we're making a contribution, we're helping somebody else, where normally in our daily jobs, we're doing things for ourselves and our family. To actually work for charities, Samaritans, or whatever organization you work for, you're giving something back, makes you feel good, makes you feel you're making a contribution elsewhere, and that really is healthy for you.
there's
different,
two
isn't it?
guys who are down in our studios in Western House in London who are just salivating at the prospect of coming on just to say, Carey, you're absolutely right. They're from the Kindness Offensive. They're David Goodfellow and James Hunter. Welcome back to the programme, fellas. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, you hear Carey saying that we feel good. It does something for us if we're able to do something, which is exactly your philosophy at the Kindness Offensive.
Absolutely.
The difficulty is, fellas, this lady was taking the money out of somebody else's account. How do you feel about that? What do you think of this Robin Hood bankerin?
Well, it was a nice sentiment on her part, but she obviously went about it in the wrong way. I think in this case, it's a real credit to the German judge that he didn't put her in prison. It would be really awful to be having this conversation with that lady sitting in a prison cell. So,
We'd still have it.
We'd still have it, but it'd be a real shame because she was trying to do something good, and I think the judge recognised that and only gave her a suspended sentence, which is, I think, which is good news. But obviously, this was the wrong way of going about it. Had she contacted us, we would have advised her to approach the bank directly to do something kind of like we did last August with the Bank ING Direct, who supported the Everyday Kindness Awards with us. So you can go about things in the right way, you can get good things done, and avoid prison time, which has got to be good.
Yes. Now, have you heard of this helper syndrome before, fellas?
Touched on it a couple of times. Obviously, being part of the Kindness Offensive, people talk to us about this stuff. It does kind of sound like something that's been cooked up by a lawyer to me, to be honest, in for a defence, or something that Santa Claus might ask elves in an application process. So I don't know how real that is. I don't know. I'm on the fence about it myself, to be honest.
Has there ever been a circumstance where somebody's gone to do something, an act of kindness, but it's backfired on them?
Funnily enough, we were doing a radio show in London for BBC London, and they asked us to do live random acts of kindness. And one guy went a bit crazy. He felt like his privacy was being invaded. So it slightly backfired, but that probably had more to do with the microphone being put in his face at 9 a.m. in the morning on a Sunday. I don't know. Sometimes you can help people. I'm sure we've all had this experience where you help someone and they start taking that help for granted.
Oh.
Yeah. So it can. Sometimes I think being kind and being helpful isn't as necessarily as obvious as it might appear when you first start thinking about it. The classic is, do you always give chocolate to the kid who asks for it, even though that's what they want and it's a kind thing to do? You don't really want to continually give chocolate to the kid because we all know the consequences of that. But I think if you think about it, you can avoid it backfiring, and if you keep persevering, you get better and better at it.
Right. Back to Carey then. What happens then in those circumstances where, you start to get taken for granted, Carey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting. I think when we actually lived in communities and when we knew our neighbors 3 doors down and when we lived near our extended families and everybody knew you, when you did an act of kindness to somebody, they accepted it. Now I think people are very suspicious. I think what you see is people. I remember once I did a television program where we actually tried to do things, some kind things to people on the street, and they were very suspicious and ran off. They didn't want to know.
Yep.
They didn't know who we were. The camera was hidden, of course, and they didn't know who we were, and they just didn't want to. What's this guy doing? Why is he being nice to me? And we're not used to people being nice anymore.
Well, I am, because I've got Karen McKenzie working with me.
Well, no, we've had a text in from Graham in Fife. He's saying, I suffer from the random acts of kindness syndrome. Well, elaborate, Graham, because I don't actually know what you mean by that. Tell us. I'm presuming he's a parent or somebody's obviously... Yeah. So tell us more, Graham. Yeah, let us know what you're up to.
All right, and if anybody else wants to let us know some of their random acts of kindness, let us know. But we're concentrating today on sport. What are you good at? Carey, what are you good at? What sport are you good at?
Oh, that's great. I'm good at watching sport. I'm great at that. I go see Manchester City and Queen of the South when I'm ever up north.
Right, that doesn't count.
It doesn't count, huh?
Watching doesn't
Observing
count.
doesn't mean anything, huh?
Right. And David and James, what sports are you boys interested in?
I'm good at thinking about wanting to start a sport.
Right, so we've got watching, we've got thinking. What's the third thing then?
When I was young, I was
avoiding
into swimming, but not so much anymore.
Right, fellas, it's nice to talk to you. It's the season of goodwill. Any advice for our listeners over the festive period?
Make the most of it. It's the ultimate alibi for niceness we've created in society. And, see how it feels, use it as an excuse to push the boat out a bit and be as nice as you possibly can. And one thing we always say to people is observe how you feel when you're being nice. Yeah. And, if the feeling is a good one, that's worth making a little note of and worth repeating. Yeah, because often we forget how things make us feel. I don't know, you like when you try a dish of food that you haven't eaten for a long time, you think, oh, wow, I really like this. And sometimes kindness can be a bit like that. You forget what it tastes like. So, use the season of goodwill to be nice to people and keep a note of it, maybe even literally on a pad and paper, and do it again and again. Because, like I said before, you will get better at it and you will feel good about yourself.
Good man. Thanks very much. David and James from the Kindness Offensive and Professor Carey Cooper. A pleasure as always. Thanks for sharing your time.
Take care, Fred.
Cheers now. It's 25 minutes past 10.